Hi. Hi there. Good morning. Welcome to another video and another shirt. Just going to follow up on some of my thoughts from the last video I did. Um, Thanks for comments. Really appreciate them. And it's led me to thinking. So the title of this video is 1, 2, 3 ABC. It's simple as. Um, anyway, last time I talked a little bit about adaptation, development, evolvement, and refining in solution focus. And I'd like to follow that up a little bit more. And some of these thoughts are random, some of them are well thought out. As usual, I don't have much of a script. As part of this video and this particular episode was formed by Mark McCurgall's paper, SFB 2.0. Now, I'd like to state from the outset, Mark is a brilliant man, a genius, and his paper is excellent without any shadow of a doubt. Whether we call it SFBT1, SFBT2, SFBT3, 4.7, 256, it doesn't matter. It should still resemble SFB. And SF therapy or SF practice has some real core underpinnings, which we've kind of touched on before in some of the other videos. Some of those underpinnings are that the person we're seeing as a preferred future, a desired outcome. Some of what we do is gather a rich description of that. We follow people's answers with the next question based on that answer, or based on the preferred future. The agenda is for clients, not ours. We believe in people's capacity to make change, people's capacity to see a future, and so on and so forth. So when these developments happen, when Mark's paper happened, Mark has to have an audience to listen to that paper, to read that paper, to discuss a paper, to give feedback, and so on. And in this particular case, and I don't want to concentrate too much on Mark's paper. In this particular case, Mark has been very open about getting feedback and about responding to that. And again, I would expect nothing less from Mark. We talked a little bit in my last video, or I talked a little bit in my last video about how we recognize SF, and I've reiterated that. And we can open the stable door, open the shop, and see the thoroughbred that is solution focused. And it's very easy to recognize solution focus. It's easy to see where developments, refinements, and adaptations happen, but still have that solution focused flavor. It's sometimes more difficult to understand when something is like solution focused, has some elements of solution focus, but doesn't feel quite right, or doesn't feel quite SF. But in order to do that, people have to have a platform for that, just like I've got a platform now. So let's take, for example, homework. In the early days of SF, homework was very important. Come maybe from a systemic family therapy side, maybe from Milton Erickson's kind of influence. But the idea was at the end of each session, people would be given homework or have homework suggested. No, in fact, they were given homework. We'd like you to do this before the next session. And it would be related to the miracle question or related to exceptions or scaling tasks and so on. So in some ways, it was quite behavioral. And in some ways, it became less behavioral. So there'd be viewing tasks as well as doing tasks. Now, over a period of time, giving of homework changed and it became suggestions of things to do. And then that changed and it became less used altogether. Between session tasks or suggestions to notice things became more prevalent. So the fact that they were a suggestion rather than an edict was really important. That gave the person we see him a chance to say, no, I don't want to do that. And they didn't have to report in on it. It became an optional thing, but was often observational. And SF is much more observational and behavioral, or should be much more observational and behavioral. So there's an example of something changing throughout time that was clearly for the benefit of improving, refining, developing SF, and keeping with the core assumptions and the core beliefs of SF and what it was. Now this happened over a period of time. people within the SF world will find things that they find useful, and they'll find a platform to promote those ideas. They'll find a platform to have people listen to those ideas, have people respond to those ideas. And the platforms are either books, videos like this, message boards, conferences, workshops, places where other people that are interested in SF will go to listen. And here's where I suppose the exploration, the question comes into point. How do people get those platforms? Um, where do they come from that these platforms exist that allow them to do this? Now, I'm reasonably tech savvy. I can upload a YouTube video. Therefore, I've got a platform. I have no control over who listens to me. I've got no control over what responses they leave. And to some extent, I've got no control over whether people agree to me with me or not, and that's fine. But some people have more control. Okay. Some people have more control about where they're heard and in what places they're heard. So let's say you have gone through academia. I've gone through academia. I've got a master's in solution focused therapy. And through that academia, you've written a couple of books. And somebody's referenced your books and you've referenced their books. And you became well known in particular circles. You get on a board of an association, or you become part of an editorial board of a journal, or you belong to a collective of people that promotes your wares, if you like. You go out training, you become well known. And because you become well known in that circle, you are listened to, because what you have to say often is useful. People hear you, people respond to you. How do you get there? And who doesn't get there and who doesn't get listened to? Those are some of my questions, I guess. And I don't have answers to them. I'm just posing the questions. So when somebody says to me, I wanted to be part of this conference, or I wanted to go to have this book published, or somebody listen to my videos, I can only say, well, you can just put it out there and see what happens. But sometimes there's gatekeepers. And what I mean by that is this. If I want to go to a conference and I have to pay for it, then I have to have a certain level of income to be able to pay for that. If I'm from a disadvantaged group, I may not have that level of income. I may not have had access to those levels of academia, or been able to write such books, or been able to present at conferences. Now, that doesn't mean that people who present at conferences and write books shouldn't be able to do so. What it does mean is we have to open up some opportunities for people that can't do that, for whatever reason, to be able to do that. We have to level the playing field a bit. And I'm not talking about necessarily affirmative action or particular political actions that are big. I'm talking about how we address some of the issues that allow people to have a voice, that allow people to have a platform. So I mentioned before looking at reference pages of books. I mentioned before looking at who the keynote speakers were at conferences. And it's right and proper that people have got a good thing to say about SF, that have got a good message to give, have the opportunity to do that. And that doesn't mean we exclude the same people. It doesn't mean that the people who are writing the books and are going to the conferences shouldn't carry on writing books and going to conferences. But it does mean we should try actively to open things up. So we should say, our conference is being held in New Zealand. We know that Māori people generally are disadvantaged and of lower income than Pākehā, European people in New Zealand. So having a low-cost conference is a way of addressing that. Ensuring that local cultural norms, tikanga, local cultural traditions are observed is a way of welcoming people. Having somebody who's a keynote speaker that's non-white is a welcoming thing. Encouraging people to submit abstracts from marginalised, disadvantaged groups is a positive step. You can't make these things happen, but you can encourage, you can welcome. And I would suggest that we look at our boards, that we look at our associations, we look at our groups that write books together, we look at our message lists, we look at diversity statements on all of our websites, on all of our promotional material. We look at ways in which we can welcome different voices. If we welcome different voices and more voices are heard and more people have the opportunity to say things, then some of the developments in solution focused won't be simply from the same people, from the same cultural groups, from the same representative small body of people. We need to widen this out. If we really want solution focus to be a big worldwide movement, we need to recognize that we include more people than the traditional groups that set up, started, and promote SF. Now, that doesn't mean, as I said earlier, these people are not important. Of course they are. There's some fantastic learnings I've had from people over the years. And to be honest, it's only recently I've started to question why and where and how those people form these groups that promote the ideas. I'd like to see ideas coming out of India. I'd like to see ideas coming out of China. I'd like to see ideas coming out of African Americans. I'd like to see ideas coming from Maori people. I'd like to see ideas coming from other sections of society that are disadvantaged but don't necessarily have a seat at the table now. Um, I'm probably going to leave it there. And I know some of my thoughts today have been rambling, but that's exactly what they are, just thoughts. Okay, I haven't got a script. I haven't said this is what I'm going to tackle today. It's what's coming from my head. Um, I'm very happy for people to clarify some of it for me or ask me to clarify some of it. And I'm very happy for people to kind of put their thoughts in comments and put some things right for me. Thanks very much for listening. Bye.